Hello everyone, welcome to this episode of Co-Angler's Corner brought to you by Olson Home Theater. I'm Russell Olson. Today on the show, we're going to be continuing our series on soft plastic baits. For this episode's Frugal Muse Books Spotlight Bait, we're actually going to be talking about an old classic, one of the originals, Twister Tail Plastic Worm. Before that, though, we are going to be actually talking about hooks. I'm going to be spotlighting a few different types, kind of digging deeper into their uses, the types of hooks I like to use for certain applications, and things like that. I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with an old classic. Before I get into this one, though, this hook is, I want to say, a second generation hook, because the original hooks were all straight shanks like this, no curve to help hold your bait on. And those hooks are still around. A lot of people use them. I use them for very few applications. Like sometimes I'll use it to for a wacky rig Senko, for example, if I'm not fishing any really thick cover, be a smaller one. So I just wanted to cover that quick because that is a classic hook. Now to this hook, the real difference here, and this is a good hook. It's been around many years. Like I said, I would consider it a Gen 2 hook, simply because, again, the originals were always all straight. Now, this type of hook was generally really the first hook that was designed with weedless rigging, like Texas rigging, for example, in mind. With this type of bait, with this type of hook, you would thread this down and through. Now, what makes this type of hook unique, especially when it first came out, this edge here, pull back down here. This curve right here, I forget what you call it, but it's basically, it helps keep the worm on your hook. So was really, with this hook, I would say this is the main innovation, or that was the main innovation of this hook, is the part that helps you keep your worm on. Now there's been variations manufactured. I believe this is an older Eagle Claw. It had a curve on it. I forget what it was for. I don't know if they thought it made for a better hook set or better keeps your bait on. I'm not sure, but I've used these hooks. They're good hooks. I guess one thing I should do too is probably take a step back to discuss, first of all, the thickness of the hook, the heaviness of the hook. Like this particular hook here, and I'll get back to the details of this particular type, but this is a really thin hook. I feel like when you can get away with using thinner gauge hook like this, I believe you get better hookups with them. But there's some applications that they're not the best. I wouldn't really use these with braid, because these thin hooks like this, the as you can see, they're easily bent. So, and that could, you could, if you have your drag too tight especially, you could straighten that hook and hook come right out and lose the fish, even with the barb not pinched down. So, this one here, like I was showing you, this is a little bit thicker hook. This is something I would use braid on. Something that I would use if I'm flipping and pitching. Being, in really thick, heavy cover, needing something I can really tighten that drag down and just horse them out, even with braid. Be able to horse that fish out of really thick cover, really, really thick lily pads, things like that, like I said, conditions when you're flipping and pitching. So, getting back to the various types of hooks, we'll go back to this one here. This is it's a little bit smaller one, but this is what they consider a wide gap hook. Tubes is a good application for a hook of this shape. There's obviously various different sizes. This is a little bit thinner hook. This is a little bit heavier hook. Like I said, I try and whenever I can get away with using the thinner one, I still like to use it. There's one of the advantages when this type of hook came around, especially for tubes, especially on your bigger size hooks. There's more room for the fish to bite down on the plastic, so the plastic is exposed a little bit easier when you go to set the hook. So I mean, I would say vast majority, and I do mean vast majority, not all the time, but my vast majority of my Texas rigging or weightless rigs, I would use this type of hook. I just have confidence in that wider gap. And there's different variations. Here's kind of a unique hook. I say it kind of combines the attributes of both just a regular worm hook like this, and then your wide gap. And also, like this particular one, it's kind of interesting that the point is pointed down a little bit, and makes it a little bit easier to do what's called tex posing. It's like Texas rigging, although instead of just burying the point of the hook in the bait like this, you can actually bring that hook all the way out. And this isn't how you really rig. I'm just using this so you can see an example. You just bring that back in, and the top of the hook point is exposed, but the hook point itself is actually buried in the bait. So when a fish goes to bite down on this, comes out like that. Comes right out. So I think there's advantages and disadvantages to tex posing. Huge advantage, I feel like you get a lot better hook sets. You got a lot less plastic to have to go through to get the hook up. Those are the advantages. Now the disadvantage, especially in weeds, one huge disadvantage is I've had a lot of times the hook will come out of the plastic and hook on weeds, and you've basically wasted a cast. But to me, I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. So the last type of hook I want to talk about today is these type of hooks. This is more of a drop shot hook. It's very similar to a circle hook. Circle hooks, from what I've seen, are generally used more with catfish applications. I guess one thing about those type is I guess you don't really have to set the hook hard, the shape of the hook, because it's a little more, they're bent way in more, even more than this Yozuri hook. So the advantage of that is not really having to, when the hook's exposed, I should say, you don't really have to set it that hard. But this type I got in my hand here is more of a drop shot hook. It's probably a little bit bigger drop shot hook. I know when I first started using drop shot rigs, I was using a little bit bigger hooks like this, a little bit bigger baits, and I've really found, now there's times I guess they'll bite a bigger bait. I've had them bite some of my bigger baits before, but usually most of my success on the drop shot rig generally comes with smaller hooks, smaller baits. Matter of fact, Yozuri. I can't remember if it's Yozuri or Gamakatsu. I think it's. Oh, it's gonna bug me now. I'll have to look it up. But in connection with, I think Mike Iaconelli helped design it, if I recall correctly. It's a hook that looks like it's almost got like a swivel type thing on it, where you got a loop on this end to run to your main line, and then a loop on this side to tie on your line with your weight at the bottom. So those kind of really worked out really well. Those ones like that, right? And the reason that design works so well too is because this can spin freely, so that avoids a lot of line twists. So that's just a little bit on hooks. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to comment below, or obviously you can email me at olsenhometheater@gmail.com. Now it's time for this episode's Frugal Muse Books Spotlight Bait. Alright, welcome to this episode's Frugal Muse Books Spotlight Bait. This episode's Spotlight Bait will be a classic, one that's been around for decades, one of the original soft plastic baits out there, the Twister Tail Plastic Worm. A few things about it. The main body of the bait can actually have various shapes. It can be smooth, it can have ridges like this one does. It can have real tight ridges like a Cinco. There's various shapes and sizes and widths of the bodies of these baits. On the back is the twister tail. It's anywhere from an inch to, I would say, 2-3 inches depending on the bait. These baits really vary in size. I've seen these as small as 3 inches, and I've actually got a couple of packs of 10-inch worms in my plastic bag, or soft plastic box. So, first of all, this is a very, very versatile bait because there's a number of ways you can work it. You can just take the bait and just swim it across. You can hop it. You can drag it along the bottom. So, and as far as the rigs that you can use this with, probably what this was initially designed for. I'm not sure when they started making these baits versus when the Texas rig became commonplace, but I'm kind of thinking that this is a kind of bait that that was designed with the Texas rig in mind. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But that's the Texas rig is one of the main rigs for this. You can put it on just a weedless hook. You can. That's not very common, but you can certainly do that. A Carolina rig is another common rig that this is used on. Um, you can use it on a shaky head rig, although with the shaky head, that's intended to be more finesse. So, and this really, I mean, it's not really a finesse bait. I mean, you can fish it really slow and make it as finesse as possible, but I really don't think that a true finesse presentation like a shaky head was not really what this bait was designed for. Um, but Carolina rig, Texas rig, um, you could even put it on and thread it and have the hook exposed, either just the hook itself or like on a jig head, other than the shaky head. Um, like I said, there's definitely a lot of different rigs and ways to fish this bait. When you're just swimming it across, I believe it imitates some sort of bait fish, or at least something with this shape, the general shape that swims. But I would say um, more of a like a shad or some sort of bait fish. When you're hopping it or dragging it, I believe it represents a little bit more of a worm, although with the twister tail, it could represent a bait fish swim along the bottom. Um, there's a number of things that it could represent. As far as colors go, with worms or most of my plastics in general, I let the water clarity and the sunlight determine the colors I'm using. With lighter, there are exceptions, but with lighter conditions, clear water, higher sunlight, I tend to gravitate more towards natural colors, browns. Green pumpkin is definitely one of my favorites in cleaner water. I'll also use white. Although, if the water is really clear and conditions are a little darker, white kind of stands out. I kind of realized that this year. I remember I don't remember if I was pre-fishing or if I was actually fishing Lake Wisconsin, but I found a few clear spots, or we found a few cleaner spots, and noticed that person I was fishing was using a white, and it wasn't, the sunlight wasn't the brightest, but it was really clear water, and I noticed that it was visible. So there, like I said, there are exceptions, but those are kind of my general guidelines. Now, if you're in dirty water, I generally use darker colors, or sometimes what I'll do is I'll take either a black is what I like to use the most in dirty water. But what I'll do sometimes, especially if the fish are finicky, I want just a little more of a natural presentation. I'll take like a brown, or maybe even a green pumpkin, mostly a brown if I'm not using black. And I'll take either a spike it dye or take some marker and just try to make that tail, or at least this far much of the worm back, make it look chartreuse. Just anything to make those fish be able to see it in the water better. So, and like I said, this bait's been around. It's probably one of the original plastic baits that are made available. It's been catching fish for decades, and it will probably be around for many decades more. So that is some information on the plastic worm. If you have questions, of course, certainly feel free to either comment below or email me directly at olsonhometheater@gmail.com. And that is this week's Frugal Moose Books Spotlight Bait. That'll be it for today's episode. I hope what we've talked about today will help you be a better angler. I'd like to thank my sponsor, Frugal Moose Books. You mentioned Co-Angler's Corner at checkout, and you'll get a 10% discount. And also, too, if you'd like to make money while helping people change their lives and feed starving kids in America, feel free to email me at olsonhometheater@gmail.com, and I'll personally respond with information. Take care and wish you luck from the back of the boat this season.